Florida home of Donald Trump has been raided by the FBI. Trump, who is currently in New York City, issued a lengthy statement where he claimed to be cooperating with a government investigation and tried to frame the execution of the search warrant as a politically motivated attack against him. Betsy Woodruff-Swan is a national correspondent at Politico, where she has extensively covered the various investigations into Donald Trump's attempted coup. Peter Baker is the chief White House correspondent for the New York Times, where he covered the Trump presidency and its fallout. They join us now. Betsy, I know you have been working the phones, talking with your sources. What more can you tell us about this developing story?
Yeah, we've confirmed that this is related to documents that the National Archives has been trying to recover from Trump, documents that he allegedly improperly took from the White House to Maralago. What I can tell you is months ago, agents went to Maralago, met with Trump's lawyers, went through boxes, looked at documents, and then took some materials with them after they left. Months have now passed, and now, today, we're seeing a search warrant be executed in Mar-a-Lago. The timing is really important here because in order to get a search warrant like this, investigators have to prove not just that they think there's probable cause, there's evidence of crime at a particular location, but they think there's evidence of a crime at a particular location and also at a specific time. So what that means is that the agents who got a green light from a judge to execute this search warrant essentially came to the conclusion that they didn't get the full story from Trump and his allies when they had that first conversation, or that at least one conversation several months earlier. It means they view this as a live issue. They view criminal activity potentially as they view evidence of criminal activity potentially as available at this location. Of course, Trump hinted at that a little bit in his statement. In the statement, he referred to or alluded to the fact that there was already, some sort of communication or cooperation between his team and federal law enforcement. Obviously, what Trump is trying to characterize as sufficient did not meet the FBI's sufficiency standards, and that's why we're seeing this really extraordinary new step being taken today. This is the type of step that would have been approved at the very highest levels of the Justice Department, all the way up, because it's so politically electric. DOJ officials know that this stuff is politically electric. I spoke to one current DOJ official a little bit earlier who's not working on this case but had a prosecutor's perspective on it. And what this person said is it's just almost inconceivable that FBI agents and the Justice Department would go to a judge and feel they could persuade a judge they had probable cause to execute a warrant like this if they weren't just rock solid convinced that when they executed the search warrant, they would find what they were looking for. Now, we don't know that for sure. Sometimes prosecutorial overreach happens. Sometimes the FBI and the Justice Department make mistakes. These are fallible, human, imperfect institutions. But the view within DOJ certainly would be that they were very, very, very confident when they got this warrant, that when they showed up at Mar-a-Lago, they would get what they were looking for.
Peter Baker, what does it tell you that the FBI was able to execute a search warrant at the home of the former president?
Well, it does tell you that something important is going on, right? To Betsy's point, it's not just that there are a few memos here, documents that they'd like very much to have back, please. They're either very important documents or, as Betsy suggested, there was something more going on here in terms of not being honest with the government, not coming clean on what was going on here. They would not take such an extraordinary step that would require approval of the highest levels of the Justice Department involving the home of a foreign president just for a few pieces of paper, unless there's something really significant involved here. They must think that this is important. We don't know enough about what kind of documents or classified papers that might still be there that they would be looking for. That's something obviously we'll be looking to find out more about. Betsy will probably be the first to know. But it will be telling because it will, I think, give some clue to the way the Justice Department is thinking about this former president this time. And they knew going in that he was going to make the kind of complaint that he did in the statement, that he would call it political, that he would try to himself politicize this raid. And they were willing to take that risk, knowing it, because they thought something important was at stake here.
You know, Betsy, you and I were supposed to sit here tonight prior to this news breaking and talk about other developments in the investigation. I wonder now how you see that as a tee-up to this moment.
What we've learned just today is that a former federal prosecutor is representing Trump before the Justice Department, specifically, at least on the narrow topic of how executive privilege relates to some former very senior White House staffers. That former federal prosecutor who's been involved in communication between Trump world and the Justice Department is named John Rowley. He's someone who, in private practice over a career of several decades, has worked on multiple national security cases and some complex multinational litigation, someone who has, frankly, an impressive resume, having worked both in the Eastern District of Virginia, one of the most prestigious and important U.S. attorneys' offices, and also who's done stints at a number of high-profile white shoe law firms. What's also notable is that Mr. Rowley, who we now have confirmed is representing Trump with the Justice Department, also represents a host of other people who are connected to the January 6th probe. Court filings show he's worked with Cleta Mitchell, a lawyer who was allied with Trump after the election. They show he's also worked with Stephen Miller, of course, an extremely well-known former senior Trump White House official who has sued the January 6th committee. And he's represented Congressman Scott Perry, a Republican member of Congress from Pennsylvania, who played a role in Trump's post-election efforts to try to reverse the election outcome. So the knowledge that we have now that John Rowley is on Trump's legal team and is specifically dealing with federal prosecutors on his behalf just highlights the extent to which it's more and more clear that Trump himself and people in his immediate circle are taking his legal problems seriously, are viewing the potential jeopardy he faces as a real issue, and are bringing on people who have the kind of experience that would be very much relevant to the investigations that Trump is facing.
And Peter, prior to this breaking news, you and I were supposed to sit here and talk about some of your exquisite reporting in the New Yorker about some of the former president's autocratic tendencies, sort of his knee-jerk reaction toward being the victim. How does what we are watching unfold fit into that larger pattern?
Yeah, actually, it does quite conveniently, in fact, because the piece in the New Yorker, which is an excerpt from our new book, my wife Susan Glasser and I have written, called "The Divider," comes out next month, focuses on President Trump's relationship with his generals and how he, in their view anyway, tried to politicize the media, politicize the military. And that's, I think, telling, because it's also what you see in the statement he issued tonight. To him, the FBI, the military, the Justice Department, he tried to politicize all of them, and he sees them in a completely political light. If they are going after him, he's therefore going to cast them in a political light rather than accept the idea that there may be, some sort of legal issue to be dealt with here. And it works. Already you see on Twitter all of his supporters and allies talking about how this is illegitimate, even though they don't have a clue about what's in the search warrant because they haven't seen it yet. All of them are casting it in a political light. This is a banana republic. This is Biden, taking revenge, all that kind of thing, without any knowledge about what's going on here. That's the instinctive reaction, and that's the one he wants to encourage because it discredits, in his view, any potential legal liability, at least with his supporters.
With no regard to how dangerous that is for our democracy. Betsy Woodruff-Swan, Peter Baker, as always, thank you both so much. More on this extraordinary raid of Maralago by the FBI, including the political fallout. That's next.